Hi, I'm Brian Schrader, and you're listening to Outstanding in Your Field, powered by Pioneer Agronomy. I'm here with my co-hosts, agronomist Carl Joran and Crystal Williams.
Think of us as IT for your crops. If we know how to fix your issues, we'll tell you. And if not, we've probably got a workaround.
And if we don't, we'll find one because Mother Nature isn't like an on-off switch.
On today's episode, we have a special guest, Brad Van Kooten. As we gear up for planters, either already started out in the field or soon to be starting, it's a little bit wet in Brian, Carl, and I's geography. We thought it would be valuable to talk about, we talk about how the crop grows outside of the bag, but what all goes into the bag. Thought it'd be really great to have Brad Van Kooten from our seed treatment business on to share a little bit of information about what goes into the bag. So Brad, I'm going to ask you as we kick off, would you mind introducing yourself? And then as we look forward to Pioneer's 100-year anniversary on April 20th, if you could reflect a little bit on your career and how that feeds into the 100 years of Pioneer.
Yeah, thanks, Crystal. My name is Brad Van Kooten. I'm the category lead for seed applied technologies for the Pioneer brand. And I've been in this role for about 8 years. Prior to that, I spent most of my career in the field as a field agronomist in eastern Iowa and different parts of Iowa. And so still look back fondly on those days working with farmers and working through some of the challenges that the farmers have worked with over the years. And so I remember back early in my career, the only seed treatment we had on corn was a product called Captan, a pink product that was just a fungicide, no insecticides, no nematicides, no biologicals. And so it's been pretty interesting to see how that technology has changed over the years. And now we've got 10 to 12, 13 ingredients on corn seed, soybean seed. So just a lot of protection, a lot broader protection. And I recall, being in the field, walking fields for stand establishment challenges, and the field would have the seed in the ground for say 3 weeks or so. And we were getting pretty nervous. Weren't sure we were ever going to see that seed again, and saw more variable stands. Now it feels like we can add, another week, maybe a couple weeks to the lifetime of that seed in the field before it has to emerge. And then I also think about, some of the things around even stand establishment and how seed treatments help with that. To me, that's pretty exciting to see. And we talked about even spacing for a lot of years on the agronomy side of things. Now it's really about even emergence. Not that spacing is not important, but that even emergence. And so as we're evaluating research data for new seed treatments, to me, it's always really interesting to see, okay, we're seeing an improvement in lack of gaps in stands or more even emergence with seed treatment. So giving each seed just a better shot at hitting its full potential. And so that to me is really exciting. Over the course of my career, I've seen farmers get so much better too, as far as, how they produce corn and soybeans. There's just the skill set is really improved over the years too. So it's been fun to see what the farmer can do, what we as a genetics company and as a seed treatment provider bring to our farmers, and just see all that come together. And just, it still amazes me, honestly, to see what a great job our farmers do as far as the high yields they produce and how consistently they produce them. I remember the first time I saw a field of 240 bushel corn, which now, for some folks would be a disappointment. And I didn't think I'd see it again. And now, guys knock out 250, 300. Obviously, take some really good soils behind that too. But just the top side and even some of the more challenging soils, how much better and consistent we see the yields from those types of acres. So it's been a lot of fun over the years.
Brad, you talked about Captan and that being the kind of only offering in the seed treatment world back, 15, 20 years ago, maybe having to peel the curtain back even further yet. But the conversation related to seed treatment hasn't evolved too much past that. It's, do I have naked seed or treated seed? It's a pretty commoditized marketplace, recognizing that, you lead an entire team dedicated to the development and the pressure testing of different active ingredients. You said we got a dozen different products that we're putting on our hybrids and varieties these days. Can you tell us a little bit about the process that it takes to get something on Pioneer corn or Pioneer beans?
Yeah, I when I started this role, coming in from the agronomy side and the product side, I thought, how hard can it be to build a seed treatment recipe? You just mix them together. and, put them on the seed and away you go. And I've been really surprised. We've got a process called PASSER, and I won't go into great detail on the entire acronym, but each letter does stand for something. And, things like around plantability, seed safety, just make sure that we're not damaging the germ of the seed, stewardship. We've got to pass all the regulatory hurdles. If I think back, some of the chemistries we were using 20, 30 years ago, the safety of those chemistries versus what we're using today has changed remarkably also. And so that to me is really a positive thing. Efficacy, given my agronomy background, performance and adding efficacy is the thing I'm probably the most excited about, to be candid. But really all those other pieces are really important also. And another thing that surprised me just being close to our research group in this area is how many products don't make it. And so there's more things that can go wrong than I ever dreamed, around inert ingredients and how things mix together and things that aren't compatible that we thought would be compatible. And so that has delayed the process for some exciting chemistry, but we've also, I would say brought more new exciting chemistry out with all of those benchmarks. And so kind of one of my worst fears being in this role is that I would have farmers that had problems with our seed treatment, and at midnight on Saturday night when they're planting, they can't plant anymore because it's not going through the planter, or worse yet, causes stand loss issues or causes problems for our farmers. And so don't want to jinx myself, but in 8 years we've not had that, and I really attribute that to our scientists and the PASSER process. There's some major companies in other parts of North America that had took out one of their major crops with a seed treatment issue. And so it's something that I hope never happens to us. And I think we increase our odds dramatically with our PASSER process and how seriously we take each step just to make sure that I like surprises, but only good surprises, that we don't have any bad surprises when we put our products out there. And so really fortunate to work with a great research team that takes all that stuff very seriously and make sure that we deliver a product that our sales reps can be proud of, farmers have good success with. We also have steps in this PASSER process where we do 2 years of field testing with the exact recipe. And so I don't know if this is the greatest analogy or not, but I kind of think about my aging parents and all the medications that they take. And sometimes those medications kind of interact in not a positive way. And so we make sure that we take everything, put it together, and we've tested it as a complete Lumigen recipe. Lumigen's our umbrella name for our seed treatments. So that exact recipe is tested in the field for a couple of years. And so we learned things around application. We learned quite a bit in those last couple of years, but again, have a high level of confidence that we deliver it to the field sales team and to a farmer that is going to perform the way we said it was going to perform. So that ain't my job easy.
Brad, you might talk. I think one of the things that's fascinating to me is just how much time we spend on these recipes and the actual treatment process itself, the physical treatment. I mean, this is not a bunch of guys in the lab titrating and doing small batches. I mean, we're running these through full-scale treaters. We're looking at all that stuff. Could you talk a little bit about the seed lab itself and the infrastructure that goes into that as well?
Yeah, so we have got several facilities called Centers for Seed Applied Technologies around the world, and they all work together and they share knowledge and information. We have one in Johnston, Iowa, central Iowa. That's one of our main seed applied technology labs. And they have kind of every type of treater. They have bowl treaters that we use like in our production plants for corn. They have the big drum treaters that you might see at your sales rep location. And they have kind of the key pieces of equipment so that it does actually start in a lab in not a petri dish, but in beakers essentially when they're mixing these ingredients together, and then they do scale ups within that facility. And then we typically try to get scale ups at like our production facilities and sales rep locations. So in an ideal world, it starts in a beaker, in a test tube, and we work our way up to testing it at a sales rep location, particularly for soybeans. For corn, it would be a research or a production plant in a bowl treater. And those guys are really good, so they don't miss much, but it's still hard to replicate the real world. some of the challenges that you get environmentally, different treating facilities, soybeans are not, or corn seed is not ubiquitous as far as, or homogeneous. And so just getting cold seed, warm seed, all those types of things, and trying to test as many things as we can prior to sale has really helped us. And again, kept things really, I think, seamless. And if there's been issues, we've been able to fix them before they become an issue on Saturday night for a farmer that's trying to get a field in before the rain comes.
Well, you got that layer of complexity, and maybe there's some folks on the other ends of these microphones, Brad, that have, entertained the idea of purchasing their own seed treater and thinking, well, heck, if, Jim Rep down the road can do this, why can't I do it? And part of it's the scale and the labor and the time, right? If you're treating up 2,000, units of beans versus your rep down the road treating up 20,000, just think about how many more repetitions and practice they have, the support team they have to keep their equipment in tip-top shape, and then all the back-end stuff you and Brian just spoke to, not just the recipe itself, but how well does it treat up, in what conditions, what adjustments do we make to ensure that everything's running in tip-top shape. Kind of in that same vein of thinking, what would you say is the biggest myth related to soybean seed treating, or just seed treatment at large? Take it to corn if that's an easier question to tackle. But myth busting is something that I think is kind of fun to do as it relates to seed treatment.
Yeah, I think it's there's certainly folks that can treat their own soybean seed and do a mighty fine job. I think probably the biggest myth, Carl, that gets under my skin a little bit. And so, my friends always dig me with this one is, all seed treatment's the same, right? As long as it's got color on it, it's the same. And that's a long, long ways from the truth. And so, again, you can buy, good seed treatments in the open market. But I'm really proud of what Pioneer does and what they've enabled me to do in this role. And that is really to put what we think is the best recipe together. And so we'll source the entire industry. You can imagine, if you're a seed treatment provider, you'd like to have your seed treatment on the millions of units of Pioneer seed that's out in the countryside. And so we don't have any trouble testing products or having folks knock on our door and say, hey, we would like you to use our seed treatment. And so we test dozens products every year, hundreds, over a period of time. And I really feel like we get access to the best stuff and we're able to test it. And the other nice thing about Pioneer is that we do our own testing. And so, as you might guess, a lot of folks will knock on our door and, it's 3 or 4 bushel on beans, 7 to 8 bushel on corn kind of yield advantage claim. And sometimes we find that, but a lot of times we don't. Usually we don't, particularly if you look at all the other ingredients we're putting in. Are these products additive or not? Are they worth investing in? So it's really fun to see the testing and the research that's done every year. We also have a nice advantage within Pioneer in that we've got professional researchers, folks that put corn and soybean plots in every day, and that's what they do. That's their job. And so really nice advantage, from maybe some other opportunities you might have to get research from, other folks. Having it in-house and having professionals do it every day, I have a high level of confidence of the data that we get back. So I think those are some really nice advantages. And then the support within the organization has been really good. So I've not had a time where we had a new seed treatment and you think about costs. I always share, thinking about it from a cost perspective, that say you're treating, 20 million units of corn each year. And that's part of in the bag cost for our farmers. And so if you add another couple dollars to each bag by putting a better seed treatment on, that's a pretty significant cost for the organization that we have to pass at least part of that on to our farmers. And so there's not been a time yet within the organization where we haven't been willing to incur that cost for a better seed treatment or a better product. And so we keep layering on better protection over the years. And I think there's so much risk in farming. If we can reduce some risk by giving broader protection to our customers, they can't always predict what kind of insects or nematodes or diseases that we're going to see in a given year. And so just having that broad protection and kind of weatherproofing that seed as much as you can. Crystal talked about, it looks like a wet spring this year. Well, we've all been doing this long enough that, yeah, it might look like a wet spring now, and it may turn off, super dry in June and be dry the rest of the year. You just don't know. And so we really try to have seed treatments that give us that broad protection, rain, cold, wet, dry. Always joke, back my days in the field as an agronomist, it was either too cold, too wet, too dry, too hot. It was always something. And that's, you joke about it, but that's what our farmers deal with every year. And another thing that's talk about these new treatments or newer treatments. To me, it kind of reminds me of the genetics game that we're in. We don't plant 10 or 20-year-old genetics. We keep trying to bring newer and better genetics. And we do that same thing on the seed treatment side. So it's been really fun in my role these last 8 years. I think we've brought on like 6 or 7 new products. There's been rarely a year where we haven't brought something new in corn or soybeans or other crops. And again, we don't bring those products just to be bringing those products. They've got to be a new improvement over existing technology. And so that's one of the real advantages we have too, versus maybe someone that's sourcing their own treatments on farm to do their own soybean treatment, is they're not getting the newest and best treatments. And so one of the active ingredients we launched a few years ago is a product called Limacina. That product in itself brings anywhere from 1 to 4 bushel, kind of depending on how much phytophthora pressure you have, just that one single ingredient that you can't openly access routinely in the open market. So, a thing like that, just again, you're losing a bushel or 2 in performance by using older treatments, just like 20-year-old genetics. And so that, to me, even though, farmers could probably, there's farmers I'm sure doing a good job with their on-farm treatment, but they're just not getting access to the newest and best technology. And so you couple that with state-of-the-art treaters, so we know that application is going on the way it's supposed to be going on. And then we also, which is not common in the industry, we're adding a polymer to all of our seed treatments to kind of glue everything on. That also helps us with cold stress emergence. So there's just several things that we're able to do that give our seed treatment an advantage. You mentioned the support. We got multiple layers of support to make sure that application goes on correctly. We've got dedicated distributor that helps us with equipment setup just to make sure everything's going right, and we're applying as we say we're applying. With all that said, it's still a complex business and there's challenges every year, and so having support and service behind our reps to make sure the products are going on as desired, and that the equipment's running the way it should, really is a nice advantage for our Pioneer reps.
Carl, I want to interject a story here that gives some credence at the field level, at least to what Brad has shared. A handful of years ago, the territory manager that I work with was at the fuel station. He was filling his truck full, and local crop investigator for crop insurance and adjuster knows him. And he said, "Hey, what are you guys doing with your seed?" And my territory manager said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "I've been walking claims for 2 weeks." He goes, "I haven't walked any Pioneer fields at all." He goes, "What's going on?" And Spencer just kind of chuckled and said, "Well, hey, it's our seed treatment." And it was making a difference. This adjuster even noticed in terms of what was going on in the field with the number of claims he was having to deal with that were not Pioneer versus other folks. And I think that that's just, one example that we can probably all talk about that shows exactly what Brad's sharing here, that these products and the improvement that we've gotten from them. I'll be honest, in my geography, and we talked about population the last podcast on soybeans, I've been able to back populations off in my part of the world because of the seed treatments that Brad and his group has brought to us, because we're significantly more confident in being able to get a really good stand at a lower seed number than what we had been 10, 15 years ago. So, we're down in the 150s now compared to if you came to my territory 10, 15 years ago, we'd have been much, much closer to 200,000 because we needed those extras just to fight the Pythium, Phytophthora, Rhizoctonia, the other diseases that we were really struggling with. So that's just, I think, one example that gives you some field level understanding of what Brad's talking about here.
Yeah, I specifically remember when we added that ethoboxam treatment. I think that probably was around the same time frame, Brian, that you're speaking to as it related just guarding against damping off. And you just, the list, it's a laundry list. It just keeps going and going, to Brad's point, of all the things they've done to reinvigorate that recipe. If it's the Lumivia from the non-nicotinoid insecticide component. You think about what we have to offer in the way of Lumialza for nematicide seed treatment. It goes on and on and on, and now we're entering in this space of nutritional seed treatments, not just guarding against pests per se, but how can one lift up that ceiling as opposed to guard against the downside? Brad, I'm curious kind of your sentiments. This is a new space for the seed treatment program to enter into. What's it feel like, and what can growers expect out of their Pioneer corn in the years to come?
Yeah, I think there's continued opportunity. Just like, we've been working on our genetics for, 100 years. I think we're going to be able to continue to work on our seed treatments and continue to make them better. And to your point, we feel like we've got, we're in a good spot. We can always be better, fungicides, insecticides, nematicides. We'll keep looking for newer and better products there. But a new area for us this year is growth nutrition. And we have tested hundreds of products, micronutrient blends, macronutrient blends, over the years, and have just not had much success finding anything that adds to our current recipe. But that changed last year, a couple of years ago, with Lumidat Volta LS for corn. So it is nutritional supplement and very low rates. I mean, if you looked at the actual rates of each nutrient, it's so small that, I don't talk a lot about it. But what I do like is that combination is translated into yield and a little better stand establishment. And so to me, the proof's in the pudding as far as how it performs. So I don't try to get too caught up on, what each nutrient is in the mix. I'm looking at performance, and we've seen 3 years of solid performance with Lumidat Volta, adding 2 bushel, very high level of consistency. And so it's just exciting to be in that area, and just again, and kind of a new horizon for us as far as additional yield. Again, there's lots of products in the marketplace. We just hadn't had any success with any of these products until we tested Lumidat Volta. And so something we started adding to our corn seed last fall, and then, the future, essentially everything this fall will be treated with Lumidat Volta. So high percent of our corn has it on this year, and then it'll just get higher and higher as we continue to treat new crop in future years.
On that line of thinking, as it relates to spring and it being 50, 60 degrees outside, on a day like today when we're recording, middle of April, we're going to get a nice, warm shot of a few days where you're looking at the upper 70s. If you got the seed that's been delivered to, your tool shed, and it's been sitting there in the dark and the cold, any tips for folks to maximize flowability that you might recommend, space around the boxes, bringing them out in the light of day? You've been at this for a while, so you've probably got all the handy tips and tricks for folks as they prepare to get their corn to the field.
Yeah, no, good question, Carl. So one of the challenges is, cold seed. You take it out into a warm environment, particularly early afternoon planting. You can have condensation form on that seed and have challenges around planting. And so if we can get some temperature acclimation to that seed before planting, to get a little closer to these 70s or 80 degree temps we might get in a typical planting window, that's helpful. But with all that said, I'd say that the one real key thing is just talc and graphite. And we added Poncho 1250, high rate of Poncho 1250, or Lumidat, or Lumisure 1250 here a few years ago to our chrome seed. And so we were really cognizant, that's a pretty high rate of seed treatment. We didn't want any plantability issues. So we did a bunch of testing. We put seed in cold storage down at 50 degrees, took it out in a seed tender. We actually partnered with John Deere and Kinsey with that, took it to John Deere's farm and asked them for the toughest planter you got. Give us the most difficult planter. And so they had one that had a ton of tubes on it. It was a 36 row, 20-inch planter. And so they gave us that planter and did the testing with us. And so we found the smallest seed we could find and the largest seed we could find, just again to try to replicate what growers might experience. And I was surprised if we took talc and graphite and actually followed the manufacturer's recommendations or John Deere's recommendations. We also did it with Kinsey. If we followed the recommendations and mixed it well, we were able to plant up to 85,000 seeds per acre on corn. So I'm like, oh, this is pretty good. And it was a nice warm day. So we had some condensation, but that talcum graphite really fixed it. It surprised me, for my days in the field. I'm not sure. I'm sure you guys, everyone listening to this does a really good job of mixing their talcum graphite. But I had farmers that I work with in Iowa, that didn't probably do the greatest job of mixing that talcum graphite and had some challenges. But if we mix that well and follow the recommendations, we were very successful. So yeah, ideally, if I could warm the seed up, that would give me even a bigger advantage. But I think that talcum graphite and mixing it well and just being conscientious there really has helped us.
Brad, what you're insinuating is we need to slow down and evaluate what the manufacturer is recommending for talcum graphite. But sometimes in the rush of spring, it gets a little bit hectic, and we don't want to think about doing that. So I can understand and empathize with customers there. The next, kind of shifting gears a little bit towards soybeans. As I think about our geography, we cover Illinois and Indiana, and within that geography has been a pretty big hot spot for red crown rot. I guess where are we at in terms of evaluating seed treatments on the market and something to help support customers in that way?
Yeah. So some growers that have dealt with red crown rot know it's a really difficult disease. And so I'd like to say that, seed treatments are a silver bullet for red crown rot. You don't need to worry about anything else. One of the neat things about working for Pioneer over my career is that we've had challenges in the past around our products and various things. The really cool thing is the organization has always done a really nice job of trying to figure out the issue and get it fixed. It may not be, overnight kind of thing. We talked about stand establishment. I remember the first half of my career that stand establishment wise, we really were not better than the competition. And usually I was a little nervous to go out on those side-by-side calls because we had challenges getting stands. So I think we've kind of flipped the script there. Red crown rot, I don't know that I would say that we were at any disadvantage. It's just a really tough disease. And so we work closely with our plant breeders. They now have scores for red crown rot. We evaluated every seed treatment that we possibly could. We developed a lab test in Indy that we can pre-screen products to determine whether they're going to have efficacy for red crown rot. So we've looked high and low there for additional support for red crown rot. And so we continue to learn. Also, we've got a phenomenal agronomy staff as far as understanding what's going on in the field and trying to figure things out. And so I think really the genetics and seed treatment component, that combination is going to give growers the best shot at red crown rot protection and yielding through that. Seed treatment wise, we've looked at products kind of the SDS realm like Alivo, Sultro. This new product from Syngenta called Victrado. We've looked at all three of those. And Alivo and Sultro provide some efficacy, but we've seen quite higher or improved efficacy on red crown rot with Victrado. And so we did source some of that for our Pioneer reps in the red crown rot areas this year. We'll continue to learn. We'll continue to do research. But on the seed treatment side, it does appear like it's a step change improvement over our other options. Again, don't think it's a silver bullet. It doesn't cure everything. So take the best Pioneer genetics you can, couple that with our Lumigen seed treatments and Victrado, and that's going to probably give you your best shot moving forward. Another interesting little side note is our base treatment, just our Lumigen treatment. We can't quite figure out what component, but when we put that combination together, it's got again, not silver bullet, protection, but it's got an edge over some competitive base seed treatments too. So we really like kind of that 1-2 punch that we've seen with a little improvement with our base treatment and then couple the Victrado with it. And so I feel good about our offer for this year in that I think with the genetics, pick genetics that got the best tolerance you can find from Pioneer and then couple it with Lumigen plus Victrado. I think it gives us the best shot for our farmers to have success in that under that disease. It's a tough one. It's a nasty one. I remember when SDS, sudden death syndrome, came into my area and was devastating. And over time, again, Pioneer did a really good job building better tolerance. Products like Alivo came on. And so it's something we can manage fairly well right now. And with red crown rot, I think we'll get there also. We'll continue to improve. But those are kind of the things that we've seen to date on that disease.
Thank you for the reassurance on, that as a company, we're evaluating all types of products to help solve this. And like you said, a single seed treatment is not going to be the silver bullet to change disease like red crown rot. So pairing that with different ratings and different things like that from our genetic standpoint is very valuable. So basically as I think about, as I reflect on our conversation here, Brad, it sounds like you thought about your time as a field agronomist and wondered how you could make our lives a little bit more simple in the springtime and maybe a few less service calls. And I think we've definitely seen the fruit of your labor here over the past 8 years. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. It's just a great research team behind us at Pioneer supporting our efforts, and our leadership too at Pioneer is very, very farmer focused. And so it's fun to work with people like that really they're going to sit down at Thanksgiving and Easter and various other holidays with their family, their farm, and have to explain, why they brought a product or didn't bring a product. And so we all kind of experience that together. And so it's pretty near and dear to all of our hearts.
Brad, any final comments as our listeners are planting or about to get the planter out in the fields here this spring?
Yeah, I'm excited about another year, and it's great to get some moisture over a wide geography. We got some nice rains in Iowa also. Otherwise, I think planters would probably be rolling, at least on a limited basis. But activity's been pretty light. And so now hopefully get a little sunshine and warm things up a bit and get some good soil conditions. And we'll do our best from a seed treatment perspective of protecting that seed as long as we possibly can. And so I'm excited about the future around, seed treatments and genetics. I've been doing this for 33 years and I'm still super excited about the future. There's just a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline and a lot of new technologies and farmer skill levels continue to get better. And so it's been a lot of fun and look forward to the future.
It's awesome when all those factors between genetics, seed treatments, and our environments can all line up together and we can all see it playing in action. So thank you again to you, Brad, and your team for providing that, life jacket or sense of security that all of our hybrids need and varieties need out in the springtime. So with that, we will catch everybody next time.
This has been another episode of Outstanding in Your Field. Like and follow our podcast wherever you are listening. We've got a new episode at least once a month. You can also find us on YouTube by following Pioneer Seeds. You can find me on Instagram at B_K_Schrader.
I'm Crystal Williams. You can contact me at crystal.williams@pioneer.com.
And I'm Carl Jorn. You can follow along with me at CJorn on X or on Facebook at CJorn Agronomy. That's CJOERN.
That concludes this Pioneer Agronomy video podcast. Visit our page on pioneer.com and follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more agronomy insights.